My name is Barbie the Welder and I'm a full-time metal sculptor. But today I'm also a wood carver, kind of. As an artist, it's your job to experiment with stuff. And that's just what I did when it came time to me putting bases on my sculptures. I wanted to elevate them. I thought that having a wooden base would make them look more refined and fancy, so I set out on an experimental journey on how to put wooden bases on sculptures, and I'm going to share it with you. So it is an experimentation process when we do stuff as artists, usually. And my first experiment with putting a base on a sculpture was a total failure. I loved the sculpture, I loved the base, but my knowledge of wood wasn't good enough to make it work together. The base was it was like a slice, like if you were to take a tree branch and it was a slice off of it, and then it was beautiful. It was just all kinds of great shape to it and this character, and I was like, oh, this is beautiful. And I drilled a hole through it. I put a pin, I welded a pin to the bottom of my sculpture, and I put it down and hooked it onto the base. Thing was, the base was wobbly. What had happened is that the wood shrunk and it cracked, and it just wasn't a dry enough piece to begin with. So there's lesson one: make sure your wood is dry. You can get it from a local person that knows about wood, and that's the best advice I could probably give you. It's not my area of expertise, so I went and got the information from someone whose area of expertise that it was. So I went to a local cabinet maker. It's their job. That's what they do, and that's what they love. So it was very easy just to explain to them what I wanted, what my goal was, and then they helped get me there. So they suggested walnut, which is a harder wood. It was beautiful. I liked the grain, and so I thought that was a good match. And they gave me wood that was already dry, so it made my job so much easier. So now that you have the right wood, I bet you're wondering how you're going to turn this beauty into this beauty. You use this beauty. Now, Tiger X, this is my preferred brand by York Boces. There are lots of different flap discs on the market. This is just a flap disc. This is used for metal, and like I said, this is an experimental journey in how to do stuff with art, and this is not what it's made for, but let me tell you what, it is amazing. The finish that I got using this on the wood, I'm in love with. All my sculptures are going to have wooden bases that are finished with this. And how you do it is this, and this is what happens. So I told you it's not made for it. This is burnt, and what happens is, because when you're working with metal with a flap disc, the metal's job is to work with this, and it breaks down these little flappy things. The wood fills it in, and the result that you get from them filling it in is like you get this, it burns a little bit. And for me, now again, it's experiment, so you go out and you do your own thing, but the colors that I'm getting, it's like this, just it's a smooth finish. I'm getting a variety of colors, so I'm getting like these tans and browns and a little bit of black in there. It is gorgeous to me. Now that's, again, to me, and it's subjective. So I'm using a flap disc on an angle grinder so that I am just taking it. You can shape it, so as you see, I've got, and this is not straight, so see how I did that? I did it on purpose so that it has these curves to it, and it's just, I've smoothed out the edges, and the bottom is just left. But it just has these gorgeous colors that I'm in love with. So play around with it, experiment with it, see if you like it. So flap disc on the wood gives you beautiful. So when I was on my way out of the cabinet maker's shop, in a pile of scraps I happened to see, and that's where I got all my stuff, was from their scrap pile, and I just had them plane it and cut it. I happened to see this gorgeous shape, this base. It is a Japanese lilac. So I saw that and I immediately said, I need to build a tree for this base. I need this base. So I wanted it to be black because of the sculpture, and I went and burnt it. So you could take a torch and you can very lightly burn wood, or you can very heavily burn wood. But what happened was, I have a lot of these stories. What had happened was, in the process of burning it, this wood was dry, but I think, and like I said, experimenting, I just burned it too fast and it cracked. And I was heartbroken because I had already built the sculpture for this base, and now I have this piece of wood that is just, oh man, I was so bummed because of the fact of I built the sculpture for this base. This is what I wanted. So in the journey of it, I was actually told by my son, who is 13 years old, he says, why don't you cut out, because it wasn't cracked all the way through, he says, why don't you like kind of groove out where the crack is, fill it with glue, and then something pretty to put in there. And he didn't say pretty, that's my words. But so in the journey, I said, okay, let me experiment. I dug out the cracks. I crushed up some glass that was red and orange and yellow, and I thought the color would be just like fire in there. And when I glued it in, it was just so dark, you couldn't see it, it didn't pop, and I was like, okay. So my next journey was to find these are genuine stones that I bought through Etsy, E-T-S-Y. I love Etsy for so many different reasons, but there's so much stuff on there. Came back, and once it got in, I did the same thing. I just inlaid, I cut the glass and stuff out. I inlaid these stones. Look, there's a fuzzy. I inlaid these stones and then just glued them in. Now, when I first finished the sculpture and it was just the plain black base, I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I almost cried when it cracked because my vision was just so solid in what I wanted, and then when it cracked, it was, oh, it just didn't look good. It looked awful. I was bummed about the fact that my first trial with the glass didn't work, but now with this, two things happened. First of all, the base is way better than I could ever have imagined, and I wish I can catch the blue in there. Those stones are blue. They're turquoise. They're actual, like the genuine turquoise stones. So not only did I inlay that, and I just think it's just stunning, but if you can see the ends, I glued the turquoise to the ends of all over all the branches, so now there's like this blue all through the branches on that. Now, back to the experimenting thing, I was so soul crushed when it first didn't turn out the way I wanted, and because of that breaking, I personally feel that the sculpture turned out way better than it ever would have been had that not broken. It would have been a cool sculpture that I loved, and I know that. But with that breaking, it turned out just way better than I could ever imagine. So if something happens in your experimentation to make your base, just remember to embrace whatever comes at you instead of being frustrated. You might be frustrated for a little bit, but just stop and think, like, how can I take this situation and make it even better than what I initially thought it was going to be. All right, now that you've got your base made, you need to hook your sculpture up to your base. And I've done that in two different ways. Both work. And the first way I've done it is by taking to the bottom of the sculpture and welding. And for me, I've used 1/4 inch round bar. And for instance, if I do an inch long, a 1/4 inch round bar, I drill out the hole. I use a drill bit that's just a little bit smaller than 1/4 inch. I drill out a hole in the wood, and then I just hammer the sculpture into the base. And you make the hole just a little bit deeper than what your length of the round bar is, so that you have plenty of room to make sure, like, once you hammer it in, it's really hard to get it out. So you want to make sure that you've got more than enough room. If it's not deep enough, then your sculpture's going to stick out and it's just going to look bad. The second way I've done that is by drilling all the way through the base and by welding a bolt to the bottom of it. You cut off the head and weld a bolt to the bottom of it. You can run that all the way down through, then you're going to recess a hole in the bottom, and then you just screw the nut onto the bolt. I personally have found the easiest way is with the 1/4" round bar and pounding it in. I'm really rough on stuff. I kind of not beat them up, but I definitely shake them around quite a bit to make sure, and just experiment with a scrap piece before you go and do your actual one, just to make sure that you've got the whole depth and the diameter correct for your sculpture, so that you don't end up going and ruining an entire base. Ultimately, it's an experiment. I mean, I got here by experimenting and just seeing what happens. You could do the same thing. Just have fun with it. You know, take some scrap pieces and just play around and see what finish works for you. You might like painting it. It's just, again, it's subjective. So I'm going to put a link down in the description where you can find my favorite flap disc, the Tiger X by Welder. They work phenomenal. I am also going to put a link to my website down there and my email. If you have any questions, please email me. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. If you want to see more of my shenanigans and great speech, check me out on Instagram. And also check out my website to see more of my sculptures, and check out my Etsy page, etsy.com/shop/BarbieTheWelder, or just go there and search Barbie the Welder and see the sculptures that I have available to purchase. Thank you guys so very much, and hope you enjoy the video. Happy creating, y'all. Happy arting.